Hey guys, this is Illusion Podfics, and we're going to be reading Riptide by Punk Rock Hades, and this is going to be Chapter 5. There's a moment upon waking where everything is peaceful, where, while coming out of sweet oblivion, the memories of before haven't hit yet, so the expectations of now don't seem so bleak. Jason didn't get the chance to enjoy that last lingering moment of tranquility, a hauntingly familiar cackle cutting through the pounding in his head as the haze of drugged sleep slowly trickled away. "Wakey, wakey, little birdie," came the Joker's voice, and Jason hoped desperately that he was just stuck inside one of his nightmares, that this wasn't real, that he'd open his eyes and find himself in his bed, with the sheets in violent disarray from disturbing sleep, safe from everything except his dreams. But he could feel the bite of ropes chafing at his wrists, could feel that he was seated on a hard, unforgiving chair, not lying on a semi-soft mattress. So, when he opened his eyes to the interior of a crumbling warehouse, it was with a sense of resignation and dread rather than surprise. Anticipation of what was to come or not, he was still unprepared for the Joker's wide grin filling his vision, and he barely held down the reflexive recoil in favor of baring his teeth at the clown, anger and fear swirling through him. "Joker," he growled, and the Joker laughed delightedly. "There he is!" he cackled, reaching out and grabbing Jason's chin, gripped painfully tight as he tugged Jason's face closer. Rancid breath washed over him, and Jason struggled uselessly to pull out of the clown's grip. "You kept Uncle Jay waiting so long. I see your manners haven't improved at all since the last time I tried to drill them into your head, Robin." Jason stilled, heart stopping in his chest. Joker knew? He couldn't. There was no fucking way. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said hoarsely, green eyes meeting crazy. Joker's eyes glinted meanly, ever-present grin sharpening as he dropped Jason's chin and straightened, towering over where Jason was tied to a chair. Just like, "I didn't think I'd ever have you in this position again, Birdie. What with you being dead and all," the clown said, grinning broadly. "But here you are. What a neat trick. I'd love to know how you did it." There was no way the clown had figured him out. Not when B couldn't. Joker had to be running some sort of bluff with him. "I think you've got me confused with someone else," Jason tried, but Joker just snorted, twirling a fucking crowbar in his hand. And Jason couldn't help the way his eyes were drawn to it, the way he reflexively tensed, fear shooting through him. "I don't think I do, Robin, too," the clown said with a sharp smile, leaning back in. And Jason held himself very still, feeling his breaths come in short, quick bursts. "Batsy may not be able to see it, but you and I got so close there in the end. You can't hide from me, lamb chop." The world felt like it was narrowing to Joker's cruel smile, and the crowbar held loosely at his side, panic rising quickly and fluttering in his chest as the clown's face stopped a scant few inches in front of him. Joker tilted his head, eyes raking over him like hot coals and appearing contemplative. Those baby blues might have changed, he mused before his tone sharpened, satisfied smirk flashing. "But that fear in your eyes is the same. I know it anywhere. Delicious." His breath started coming quicker as the clown finally stepped back, cackling at Jason's obvious distress. "What the fuck?" Jason choked out, trying for angry, but the words mostly sounding afraid to his ears. Joker ignored him, going back to twirling that god-awful crowbar again, and Jason's terrified thoughts were rabbiting around, eyes flitting between Joker and the crowbar, as though unable to decide which posed the greater threat. "You know, when Mask told me someone had taken up my former mantle, I was ready to, let's say, teach them a little lesson on taking things that don't belong to them," Joker said almost thoughtfully, then cocked his head at Jason, voice going sickly sweet. "But when I realized it was you, well, you were doing such a good job with it, kiddo. I just couldn't bear to take it away from you." Jason flinched back. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" he demanded. Joker wasn't supposed to be happy about it. Jason had been protecting people under that name. He had made the mantle his own, Made it stand for something better. What the fuck did the Joker mean that Jason was doing a good job? Joker should be pissed. How do you think Batman would have taken the news that his dead bird, his precious second Robin, had miraculously come back from the dead and crossed that all-important line of his? The Joker asked gleefully, eyes glistening. The words hit Jason like a crowbar to the gut. Joker wasn't done. Oh, it was just too good. I couldn't have set the joke up any better myself. The child whose death had nearly destroyed the Batman, coming back as a criminal, taking over criminal organizations, and killing people left and right. Jason gritted his teeth, anger replacing some of the fear at the Joker's mockery. You're so full of shit. My death didn't mean anything to him. He was practically done with me before I died. Aw, poor little Robin, Joker crooned, and Jason wished his hands were free so he could punch the shit out of the bastard, oscillating nauseatingly between fury and fear. Did the bat make you feel abandoned? He did leave you behind with someone who brought you right to me. Pretty bad managerial skills, even if she was your mother. Shut the fuck up, Jason growled, and Joker cackled at him. Ooh, still a little sensitive about that, Arby, he taunted, eyes glinting madly. Don't you worry your pretty little head, Pumpkin. Even if Mommy didn't care about you, Daddy Bats certainly did. He nearly tore the city apart for you. That drew Jason up short, the anger abating in favor of confusion. What the fuck are you talking about? Joker's mean grin almost softened, eyes going distant like he was recalling something extraordinarily pleasant. He was vicious after I killed you, the clown said dreamily. Every criminal unlucky enough to cross him wound up in the ICU. No matter how petty the crime, he got closer and closer to crossing that line of his every day. It was beautiful. Then he scowled like a child whose toy had been taken away, until that next little Robin butted in. Jason shook his head, denial sitting hard and heavy in his gut. You're wrong, he said steelly. The memory of the newspaper Talia had shown him bright and painful in his mind. He didn't care about me. He replaced me within months of my death. My body was barely cold in the ground, and he was already fitting someone else for my uniform. Whatever you say, boy blunder, Joker said dismissively, the sharp smirk still cutting across his face. Gotham knows the truth. The bat was so close to showing his true colors after your death, to become exactly what we all know he's capable of becoming. Bruce wouldn't do that. Bruce didn't care. And if your death could cause that, imagine what your life could cause. When you come back as exactly the sort of person he stops. The words felt like ice water poured over him, and Jason barely contained the full-body flinch. The Joker noticed his dismay. Ha-ha-ha's echoing through the worn-down warehouse and ending on a gleeful smile. Batman would have been destroyed when he figured it out, he said, eyes glittering. 'Cause that sort of despair in Batman, that was exactly what I wanted for my successor. He patted Jason's cheek, unbothered by Jason's attempt to jerk away. You earned the right to my name. Fuck you, Jason spat furious. That's not what I was doing. I don't have anything to do with Batman. He doesn't even know who I am. Oh, I know, Joker said, and his bright, pleased expression darkened, sending a chill racing down Jason's spine. He looked at Jason with something akin to disapproval for the first time. Your determination to hide who you really are from Batsy really threw a whole wrench into my plan. I figured it would take a couple months tops before your little secret was blown out of the water. You were always such a dramatic little bird after all. The Joker huffed, irritated and almost pouting. I mean, I didn't even resist when the bat took me back to Arkham. I thought I'd be watching the aftermath comfortably from my cell within weeks. But instead, you just ran back to Daddy Bat's waiting arms. Jason half expected him to stomp his foot with how childishly petulant he appeared. You showed such promise when you first came to town. Sure, you still had some silly little morals that you followed. Only killing criminals, keeping the weak safe, yada yada yada. The Joker rolled his eyes before his expression morphed into something startlingly earnest as he met Jason's eyes. But we could have worked on that. You were carrying on our legacy. I'd never expected one of the Bat Sprats to take after their Uncle Jay, but I couldn't have been prouder of you. Jason felt fucking sick, nausea churning in his gut. Then the clown's expression darkened, and his earnest gaze turned into an irritated glare. And then you had to go and ruin it. You stopped killing, and you started working with them again. Returned to the Bat's side like a good little sidekick, and I couldn't have that, now could I? Joker's tone turned more congenial, and Jason was getting whiplash from the deranged man's rapidly changing mood. Mask was only too happy to help me, the clown said with a grin, then leaned in slightly to whisper conspiratorially. Of course, he thought the endgame was to make you angry enough to lash out against his dealers so violently that Batman would have no choice but to arrest you and have you thrown in here with me. If he had known that the plan was really for you to get angry enough to kill him, he might have been less eager to go along with it. The Joker straightened and laughed, the chilling noise grating at Jason's ears. Then the levity dissipated and irritation returned. But you didn't follow the script, which is why I've had to resort to this. And what is this? Jason demanded. Isn't it obvious? Joker asked, tilting his head down and looking at Jason pityingly, like Jason was a petulant, slow child. As long as you're playing at being some redeemed hero, you are useless to me. He paused. Well, almost useless. The clown smirked, eyes glittering from where he loomed over Jason, whipping the crowbar from behind his back to thwack against his other hand. In fact, you do still have one use. The same one I found for you the first time around. Death numero uno sent Batsy on a spiral of violence, the likes of which the city had never seen from him before. Let's see what death number 2 does. When the Bat finds out that he's gotten you back just in time to lose you again. The Joker cackled, head thrown back as Jason tried to regulate his breathing. Panicking wouldn't help him, but Jason was having a harder and harder time fighting off the green-tinged fear at the edge of his vision. The laughter faded, and the clown straightened, looking down at Jason with a still wide grin, but a look in his eyes that was almost considering. Now, he said thoughtfully, I'm willing to give you another chance here. You were doing some great work when you first came to Gotham, and you and I both know the truth. You're no hero. The Joker extended the crowbar, and Jason tensed, but the clown merely used the curved end of it to tilt Jason's chin up, forcing eye contact. The touch of the cold metal had Jason's breath freezing in his lungs. The clown's voice turned cajoling. You always were the violent Robin, weren't you? Even before I got to you. And then I got my hands on you and molded you in my image there at the end. You don't really think you could be one of the Bats now, do you? The words were almost said kindly, for all that they were a stab through the heart. Look what you've done since you came back. I've watched you, Red Hood. And Jason couldn't hold back a flinch, the moniker sounding like a curse for the first time since he'd determinedly taken it as his own. You killed people, and you liked it. Jason wanted to scream that he was wrong, that Jason had only done what was necessary, but the words caught in his chest. The Joker didn't seem poised to be interrupted anyway, continuing mercilessly, his tone increasingly manic. You don't belong with the Bats anymore. You're mine now. Come back to me. Help me show Batman what happens when he makes mistakes. Help me show him what happens when his moral code isn't enough. When the Batman fails. The words burst forth from Joker like a bomb, echoing in the empty space between them, and Jason wasn't sure if his chest or the Joker's was heaving harder. Never, Jason vowed, low and hoarse. Never in a million fucking years would I help you. After what you did? Jason laughed, the sound mirthless and painful. You're fucking delusional, you deranged piece of shit. Joker's expression hardened, then went eerily blank before being replaced by something saccharine. He stepped back, the crowbar dropping Jason's chin as he tutted. Holding a grudge is bad for your health, Hoodsey, he warned, tone pleasant but eyes glinting hatefully. But if that's what you want, then so be it. Your second death will probably be enough to send the Bat over the edge, and if it's not, there are always 2 other little birdies I can play with. The taunt did probably exactly what it was meant to, burrowing under Jason's skin and sending fury shooting through him. "You stay the fuck away from them," he growled, struggling against the ropes anew. Joker laughed at him meanly. "Touched a nerve, did I?" he mocked, all traces of petulant child whose toy wasn't behaving gone, all congeniality and earnest vanished, replaced with the confidently cruel figure of Jason's nightmares. "You can't stop me, lamb chop. I wonder if the littlest birdie screams as prettily as you did," he said thoughtfully before grinning down at Jason. Jason could feel his heart pounding, the green rage that had been absent in the face of his fear starting to return, to blur the edges of his vision at the thought of the Joker getting his hands on another Robin. On Tim. "I think, after I finish with you, he'll be next on my list," Joker said with relish. "He really did cause me so much inconvenience. Batman would have been over the edge years ago if it weren't for him." There was a ringing in Jason's ears, the green haze distorting his vision in a way it hadn't done in a long time, in a way Jason hadn't let it do in a long time. But he hadn't been this furious, this scared, since the early days of the pit. Joker was oblivious to the roiling rage continuing animatedly. "I think I'll wring every bit of that out of his neck for a few hours, maybe even days, if he lasts that long. Do you think he'd beg me to kill him? I think I can make him beg," he said with a cackle. "You're not going to touch him," Jason snarled, his voice almost unrecognizable to his own ears in its fury. "Temper, temper," laughed the Joker. "Who's going to stop me? You?" "Not likely. The Bat, he failed to save the last Robin. I'm sure you remember. He won't save this one either. And when I'm done with him, maybe I'll make him the same offer I made you. I hear this Robin's the smart one. Maybe he'll be smart enough to take the deal, be my little Joker Jr. Say, Hoodsy, your eyes sure are bright." There was a snap in Jason's mind, and the world went green. "Hood? Hood, come on, snap out of it." The prickling, roiling green receded slightly as, from a great distance, Jason heard his brother's voice behind him. Nightmarish cackling almost sent him hurling back into the green steps, but Jason held on to the clarity by the tips of his fingertips, drawing back enough to see the Joker lying at his feet, battered and bloody, but still chortling like he was having the time of his life. The metal curve of the crowbar peaked in Jason's peripheral vision, clutched in his own right hand and covered in the Joker's blood. In his left hand was a gun, the weight familiar and grounding. Jason could feel his chest heaving like he'd run a marathon, feel the burn in his arms that told him the person responsible for the Joker's injuries was probably him. But he couldn't feel anything but a vicious satisfaction at the realization and a searing fury that the Joker was still fucking laughing. "The rest of our playmates have arrived," the clown said brightly, as though he wasn't lying semi-broken on the ground. Already gruesome grin made now bloodied as his eyes glinted meanly up at Jason. "Isn't it so nice of the littlest bird to deliver himself right to me, almost like he knew I was asking for him?" The crowbar clattered to the ground, and Jason had the gun trained on the Joker in an instant. "Hood, no! Stop! Don't do it!" The three cries from behind him had Jason gritting his teeth, but he paused, glaring down at the Joker. "Why shouldn't I?" he snapped, not letting the barrel of the gun drop. It was almost vibrating, somehow unsteady. But no, Jason realized the gun wasn't quivering. His hands, which had never been anything but steady with a weapon ever since his lake training, were shaking. "Like we talked about before," Batman said calmly, though there was some strain in his voice. Jason could feel the bat glare boring into his back, and though he couldn't see the three vigilantes behind him, he could practically feel Nightwing's steady concern and Robin's thrumming anxiousness. "We can't do what we do if we're as bad as them. When we talked before, I told you this fucker would be getting a bullet in the head if I got the chance," Jason snarled. "Aw, Hoodsy, I'm touched. I didn't know you felt that way about little old me," Joker simpered, and Jason cocked the gun. He kept his eyes trained on the Joker, continuing, "I'm pretty sure there's nothing else on this fucking earth that I could even do that would be anywhere close as to bad as what he's done. So if you want to stop me from following through on that promise, you're gonna have to give me a better reason than that." "Hood." Batman's calm tone was even more strained, and Jason could picture his constipated expression, even if he couldn't see it. "You don't want to do this. If you do, we'll have to bring you in. Everything that you stand for, protecting the alley, helping the weak and vulnerable, making your home a better place, will be lost." "Will it?" Jason wondered. One of the biggest threats to the alley, to Gotham, is the Joker. The people he kills, the lives he's ruined. I can stop all of that right here, right now. At the cost of you, Batman argued, the calm facade beginning to slip. Sounds like a pretty reasonable price to me, Jason said softly, the gun steadier and steadier in his hands. It wasn't like Jason had much of a soul left after everything he'd done in the league. What was more kill on his already bloody hands? His grip stabilized, and he squeezed. Is your revenge truly worth this? Batman demanded, a change in tactic that Jason hadn't been expecting that made him hesitate. My revenge? He asked, brow furrowed in confusion. That's clearly what this is about. Revenge for what happened with your mother. Batman's tone was cold, almost goadingly so, in a way it hadn't been before. Jason was perplexed by the sudden switch, until it clicked. The Bat was trying to piss Jason off. Jason knew this strategy, used this strategy, nettling someone until they pointed the weapon at you instead of at the helpless victim. Joker was far from helpless, though. Ooh, are we talking about his mommy issues? The clown prodded with malicious glee, and Jason's teeth gritted. Personally, I find his daddy issues much more compelling, but to each their own. You told me yourself what happened to her, Batman said loudly, loud enough to break through the green haze that had started to descend again at the Joker's taunts. And Jason realized with the start that his grip on the gun had become almost painfully white-knuckled. His posture loosened. There was a pause, like Batman had seen some of the tension leave his shoulders, before the man continued relentlessly. You told me yourself that she gave you to him, and that he killed her. Though why you would hold a grudge against him for that, I don't understand. It's your mother whom you should hate. The Joker simply rid you of her. Another pause, this one lengthier, as though Batman was carefully measuring his words before saying, It seems to me as though he did you a favor. The words crashed over Jason like an ice-cold water, and even knowing that it's what the bastard wants, Jason can't stop from lowering the barrel of the gun. A favor, he repeated hoarsely, voice crackling. A favor! Jason spun around, too distracted by the fury and hurt coursing through him to care that he was playing right into Batman's hand, was turning away from his target, was leaving his back open to the enemy. He killed me! He shouted, tight and painful. He fucking killed me! And you want to call that a favor? A distant, logical part of his brain pointed out that Batman and co. should be rushing him right now. He wasn't pointing a weapon at anyone anymore. This was the moment where the Bats were supposed to kick the gun from his numb fingers, hit him over the helmetless head, knock him out and take him to Arkham, or Blackgate, or whatever hole they were dumping criminals in this week. Not stand stock still and stare at him, white-faced and silent with shock. Little Wing? Nightwing's voice was small and full of disbelief. Jason didn't even hear him, too focused on the source of his anger, who was staring at him with a blank, stunned expression that he'd never seen on Batman's face before. I guess it probably did feel like a favor to you, since you didn't have to deal with your failure Robin after that anymore, he sneered. That got a reaction from the Bat, who startled badly enough his expression smoothed into something unreadable. His gaze was trained frighteningly intently on Jason as he took a step forward. Jason tamped down on the instinctive desire to step backwards, steeling himself and holding his ground. He was the one with the right to be angry here, even if he had just threatened to kill the Joker and was definitely about to be thrown in Arkham. At least he'd get to say his piece first. You never even wanted me in the first place. I was just your charity case and someone to fill the pixie boots after Golden Boy moved on, he spat. Batman took another step forward, remaining silent and unreadable, and Jason carefully didn't let his eyes widen, trying to hide how unnerved he was by the wordless approach. Bruce had never raised a hand to him before, but Jason was a bad guy now, had practically been one of his rogues until a mere few months ago. His mouth apparently decided to fill the void that Batman's silence left behind, words that had been building up for years tumbling out one after the other. But I could never measure up to your perfect first Robin. I was just a disappointment to you, a shitty knockoff Robin who was never going to be as good as the real deal, and then you fired me from that. Jason hoped the bitter anger in his voice masked the heartbreak as Batman stepped towards him again. The bitterness festered, dark and ugly. But you couldn't fire me from being your kid. Sucked for you, right? He laughed, a hollow sound, as Batman took another step forward. The words continued to bubble up in a never-ending flood of resentment, of hurt, that he'd bottled up ever since waking in that pit. He flung them now at the bat, cruelly, painfully, angrily. I bet you were relieved when I left to find my mom. Good riddance to bad trash and all that, yeah? The bat took another step forward, inexorable and barely out of arm's reach now, and Jason's heart was rabbiting in his chest, filled to the brim with a mixture of fury, heart, pain, heartbreak, as he glared at his dad. No, mentor. You never wanted me, he accused, and Batman stepped forward once again, well within grabbing distance now. You were relieved when I ran away. Another step forward, and the bat was right in front of Jason, gaze still unwavering, focused on his face like he was drinking it in. You didn't save me. The words slipped out, hanging in the air between them. A gauntleted hand reached out, tentative, almost afraid, until it touched solid skin. Then it cupped Jason's face gently. Oh, J-Lad, Bruce whispered, an echo of Jason's pain and heartbreak written on the older man's face. You have no idea how sorry I am. Jason wasn't sure who moved first, him or Bruce, but suddenly he was in his dad's arms, face buried in his shoulder with one of Bruce's hands tangled in his hair, holding on for dear life. I died, and you weren't there. Jason was crying. When had he started crying? I'm so sorry, son. The words were a rumble against him, and Jason was reminded of being held like this when he was much, much smaller and had a nightmare. Tiny and trusting that nothing could harm him when he was encircled by those strong arms. Why didn't you come for me? The response was stuttered, hesitant, and afraid in a way that Bruce never was. I was there, just too late. The words were haunted, the arms around him tightening in response as though making sure he was real. And Jason thought maybe he wasn't the only one who'd been living a nightmare. Alright guys, and that is the end of Riptide Chapter 5 by Punk Rock Hades. I hope you guys liked this one, and I'll see you in the next one.